Hey performers, welcome back. I'm very excited about today's video because today we're going to interview a professional musician who has been playing on his own, live on stage as his full-time income for about roughly a decade now. And he has some neat approaches to how to get clients, how to work with a band, and how to make money playing music live. After the intro, we'll talk to my friend Jon Durnell. Welcome back to Danny Robertson Music, where we try to help you become the best possible performer that you can be on whatever stage you choose. I'm Danny Robertson. Thanks for joining us again this week. If you haven't seen us before, do me that favor, subscribe to our YouTube channel and join our email list at DannyRobertsonMusic.com. Today, we're bringing in a friend of mine. I work with a gentleman named Jon Durnell who plays in this group called Night to Remember. He started it off as a single band, and over time, it became a multi-instrumentalist type of group where he can pull different drummers, different keyboard players, different guitarists, different singers to put together different versions of the same band to perform for different kinds of events, whether those be things like weddings, corporate parties, some bar events. He's a great example of how to work in a band environment in a professional setting. He's great with clients. He does the before work, the gig itself, and everything that happens after a gig extremely well. So I hope this is really, really useful information for you. So without further ado, meet my friend, Jon Durnell. Hey, Jon, good to see you. Thanks for coming on the channel.
Hey, Danny, thanks for having me. Yeah, pleasure to be here.
Jon, can you quickly tell me a little bit about the band and how it came to be, your history with the music business, and how
Sure.
you've been around it for about, whatever time frame that you've been doing. So
Yeah.
go ahead.
I guess to go back to the beginnings, I kind of got a late start as far as getting into music. I was in college and played baseball in college. And after I graduated, I had all this time on my hands, right? So I had a job, but I would come home from my job and I had this time where I would normally be going to practice or coaching or whatever. And I didn't have that. So I had a guitar lying around, and a buddy that I was working with also played guitar. So he showed me a few chords and I was off and running. I was totally addicted at that point to guitar. I would have been about 23 or 24. So if you guys are starting, getting a late start, don't let that, deter you from doing what you love. Because I definitely still followed it 100% from that point. Then I met a couple guys after I'd been playing a few years, and they asked me to jam. So I went up and started jam with them. And then I got this, as you do as a musician, you get in a room with other musicians and create this thing, and it's addictive. It's a whole other language that you're speaking with other people. So I started playing with, really just jamming with these guys. And that was the next level for me. I was like, oh my gosh, I love this. So how do I do more of this?
That's cool.
And
That's how you and I met too, wasn't it? We kind of just met through mutual channels and stuff like that.
Yeah. You guys were playing out. By that point, I had been in a couple bands by the time we met. So fast forward to the days jamming in the garage. And I think I had my first gig in a barn when I had been playing about 5 years, I think. And then just, as you do, you meet new people, you come up with new ideas, and things just progress as you stay with it. I was working a corporate job, and then playing in bars on the weekends in a couple different bands. And just the whole time thinking, man, if I could figure out a way to do this 5 days a week instead of what I'm doing now 5 days a week, that would be great. I mean, my job was okay, but it wasn't playing music. It wasn't a passion of mine. So
now you went from that, you transitioned to that full time. You're a full time musician, and you have been for what, about 10 years now? Is that right?
About 13 as of January. 13 years. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So I had been, like I said, I've been playing weekends. I was sort of a weekend warrior, and then the last recession hit. and the bottom fell out of my day job. As far as sales, I was in sales, doing contract office furniture. And
Now you're talking like this is 2008, 2009 time frame.
yes, yep,
Okay.
2008, 2009. Really, it hit hard in 2009.
Okay.
That was when the bottom fell out for us in our business. And we're trying to figure out ways to save people's jobs and cut back to 4 days a week. So it was really a rough time, and I realized at that point that the security that I was investing in wasn't really there. It's not like it used to be 30 or
Hmm.
40 years ago where you could go to a job and stay there 30 years and retire with a pension. So I thought, well, if the thing that I'm in this for isn't even there, the security,
Yeah.
isn't there, then why not do something that I love and risk
And
it
try to
that
make your
way?
own security. Yeah.
And at least exactly. And at least I can
Yeah.
wake up on Monday mornings and be excited about what I'm doing. So that was when a switch
Yeah.
sort of went off in my head. And I started down that path of being a full-time musician. For a few years, I was taking pretty much every gig I could take because I was trying to support, we've got a son and I was married. So trying to support my family with my passion. I realized right away that I was going to need to be a solo acoustic guy because I needed to play through the week. Up until that point,
Okay.
I had sung backup and played guitar in bands, but I knew that I was going to need to be able to play solo to play the smaller money gigs, and just to be more versatile and take on more work. So that was another leap I made at that point, was to dive in and focus on the solo acoustic part. Fast forward to playing a bunch of gigs. We eventually get asked to play a wedding, as you do, right?
Hmm.
So we started to play a couple weddings in a band that I was in, a cover band called What She Said. And as soon as we did a couple of those weddings, I was like, man, just like jamming with the guys back in the room, you have these little moments where you go, okay, this is cool.
Yeah.
Um, so that happened to us with weddings. And we had been in What She Said, that band lasted quite a while. I think we were in about our 8th year of that band. Um, and I was just ready. I felt like it had sort of run its course and I was ready for a new challenge. And so were a couple other people in that group. So we went off and we started Night to Remember, which was
Which is
what
your current
that's
version, right?
the current
Or it's your
band. It's
current
it's
band.
the
Yeah.
current name anyway. But we started that as you talked about growing it into a uh, like sort of a build a band type of thing where you can add and subtract different members. It started out as a 5-piece band, or actually a 6-piece band, with 2 singers, guitar, sax, drums, bass. And then, we just sort of progressed at that point as sort of a democracy. Everybody was in it. We all had ideas that we brought to the table. We sort of had a vision for where we wanted to go. As time went on, we realized that we weren't really getting where we wanted to get. It was sort of one of those things where we built it, we put the set list together, we came up with the logo, we came up with the name, all the first things that you do when you're starting a
Yeah. The
business. And
traditional
that's
stuff. Yeah.
exactly. And that's sort of where we left it at that point. And just sort of like when you open up a shop, you open your doors and you think everybody's going to come in and I have a business, here I am. And
Yeah.
you realize really quickly that, hey, there's advertising involved, that you have to treat this like a business if you want it to function like a business. This was about 4 years into it. After a few years of, sort of plodding along, doing a handful of weddings each year and then gigging in my other bands too, I really wanted to be weighted more toward the higher paying and better gigs. So I approached the members in the band at that point, and just said, hey, what if, I know you guys don't want to invest a bunch of money in this project. You enjoy it, but it's not really, what you want to do for a day job. You don't want to invest money in it. I do. So what if I can guarantee
Oh,
you
cool.
that we'll play more gigs and you'll make at least as much as you're making now, only I will treat this like my business, my full-time business, and I will contract you guys out. Is that acceptable to you? And they were like, well, as long as we're going to get paid at least the same and more gigs are going to come and you're going to put your money in and we don't have to put ours in, that sounds like a win-win to us.
That's
So
cool.
that's where it took off, because then I was able to, instead of having to convince people to invest their money in this thing, I could just say, you know what, I can make the decisions. I want to invest in this thing. I've wanted to for 4 years. I'm going to do it now because I have the green light. So
So instead of saying like previous to that, you were in a group decision-making capacity type of thing,
Yeah,
and then you kind of transition to you're making this decisions for your business and you're contracting out your instrumentalists and your vocalists and all that essentially. Is that what
exactly.
you're saying?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And
Very cool.
that began a process of sort of trying to figure out what worked. So we had this 5-piece band. One of the singers had left and moved. So we were like, well, do we find somebody else, or we try to make it as a 5-piece band? Well, let's try to make it as a 5-piece band. So that's what we
I think
did.
you had me fill in at that point at one point
Yeah,
too, didn't you?
yeah.
Yeah.
That would have been probably 2019. Yeah, I think you were even helping us out at we were doing some wedding shows, and I think you helped us out at one or two of those as well. So
I
yeah,
think the first one I did with that brand, that name, I think was probably way back in like 14 or 15. Like it was pretty
okay,
early on.
okay,
So yeah, if I remember right, it's been a while.
yeah. So just trying to figure out what's going to work in our market, And I remember distinctly losing a quote to a larger band that had a horn section. And
Ah,
in my mind, I thought, well, if he wanted a horn section, he could have said, "Hey, do you have a horn section?" And I could have been like, "Well, I can get horn players, right?"
yeah.
And then I looked at it from the customer standpoint. I'm like, "Well, you're not presenting that you have a horn section. You're presenting a 5-piece band. So why would I even think to ask that you would have a horn section?" And that's when it sort of started to click with me that, okay, there is this need. It's not just about money all the time, you guys. Like, it's not just, I have to be the cheapest. I have to, it's more about what you can offer, what value you bring. Because if, as I found, if you present something bigger and more valuable, those you're attracting those customers that are looking for the bigger, more valuable things.
So
So
does it become almost like how would I ask it? More of along the lines of instead of it being hire our band, it's here's our line of products. You choose what you want. Is that more the case in this
I think
situation?
it's still, I would still consider it a product. It's still night to
Okay.
remember, but our product is malleable. Like it can conform to your budget needs, your space needs. So it's the same product. It's just improved
That's very
and
cool,
more
man. That's very
flexible.
cool.
So before you were going to get a 5-piece band, now you could get a 4-piece band. You can get a 13-piece band. So
And
we're
okay, so
making.
what's the difference between those two? Like what would that offering look like as far as what's a 4-piece get? What does a 13-piece get?
Yeah, so a 4-piece would be guitar, bass, drums, and a lead vocalist. So that's pretty much our smallest group that would
Okay.
be out there. We can do a power trio. We haven't done much of that, but that's an option. It's basically, I tell everybody, we present suggestions on our website of what I think is the best value for their money, but it's meant to be almost like a Lego kit. Like you can assemble band that you
Okay.
want with the
That's great.
pieces that are there. So that's the way I sort of share it with everybody, and they really like that because they feel like they have some input and some control over what their product is. And with brides and grooms, and especially in the wedding market, not so much in the corporate market, but in the wedding market, there's a big need. It's a big bonus if you can conform what you do to their personality instead of being, this is what we do and this is what you're going to get, and like it or leave it. You give them some input and some say in what they get, and that endears them to your brand and what you do.
Okay, so okay, let's dive into that a little bit more. Okay, so with your relationships with your client, like how do you build that? How do you market yourself? How do you go about like putting together um the way that you build that relationship with the client so that they do have that endearing quality? Because I know that you get that a lot. You actually get a lot of the testimonials that you get for your group tend to say things like John was great to work with before, during, and after the actual event, because that is 99% of the battle. It's not just the show.
Exactly.
It's there's the prep work that goes into working with the client to get them the best quality version of the product that they want. And yeah, can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yeah, you hit it on the head where it's so much more than just the performance, and this goes for any band, not just a
Yeah.
wedding or corporate band. But I learned this in my day job, right? Where I have these skills that I learned in that job that I'm no longer in that help me in the career that I have now, which is your experience with your customer is anything and everything. Any interaction that you have with them from the first meeting all the way through to where you've closed the sale, do you just leave them hanging after you close the sale? I got what I wanted and I'm on to the
Yeah,
next. Or do you send them a handwritten letter saying, I really appreciate your business. It's been great to get to know you. How do you leave that interaction? And everything in between. So I look at it as number one, how do I want to be treated? If I am the
yeah,
bride, the groom, the father of the bride, whomever is reaching out to our brand, how do I want to be treated as a customer?
sure.
And that's what I try to deliver to them. So that's the number one rule. If you don't have that empathy um, for being a customer and approaching you, you're going to look at your business differently too. You're going to look at your website differently. Don't look at it as, this is something
Here's
I
me.
created and
Here's
it's it's
me.
it's excellent because I made it, right? It's like, okay, now I'm going to put on my customer hat and go through and go, oh, okay, this seems
Why
so
is this
funky here. I
important
might be
to
able
my
to
customer? Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So in a nutshell, it's any and every interaction you have from the first phone call, even the way your website looks. That because when you're
mhm,
not having a conversation with them like we are now, your website is your stand-in, your social media is your stand-in. Any way that your customer interacts with your brand is a representation of you and your company both. So that once you flip that switch and create that mindset, it leads you to make the right decisions in all those areas.
it really is all about customer experience, isn't it? It's not just
Yes.
the stage show. Like you want to have the good stage show, you want to have the good performance because
Yep.
that's part of creating a good customer experience. But there is the before and the after like that. So it does make
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, it's like building the anticipation is important too. If they're
Yeah.
having great interactions with you all the way up until the time of the show, you show up, everything has gone smoothly. You've helped them out. You've met them at the venue before, walked through any interaction, any part of their schedule where there might be a glitch, and made them feel comfortable about what's going to happen that day. You're building that anticipation to, wow, this has been great. I can only imagine what the show's going to be like. And then you nail it at the performance, that's when
Yeah.
you've sealed the deal with them, and you've got a buddy for life, a customer for life. If they have a need for a band down the road, they're going to remember all the experiences they had with you. So that's why it's so important that you not only deliver on the stage the day of, but you responded to their email in a timely manner 6 months before you even met them face to
Yeah.
face. It's all part of the story. It's all part of the experience.
Does that does that get you a lot of repeat business as well? Like, because I know like the last one I did with your group was in December, and we played a corporate Christmas party, and you and I were just talking earlier this week, and it turns out that they've already booked us again for the next December with that same group because of how great of an experience they had the first time.
Yeah. Yeah, they could not wait to get a signed contract to make sure that they didn't lose the date. They
Oh
were
no
so
kidding.
concerned that somebody else was going to snatch it up. They couldn't wait to pay a deposit and hold that date in January for a gig that's going to happen in December.
I think that that's a lot of the reason why, like you hear people talk about you're not going to get a gig. Like you hear the naysayers that say you're not going to get a gig if you don't bring a crowd, or if you're not playing 4 hour shows or whatever it is. And
Yep.
it's like that's a very small minded. It doesn't
Yeah.
allow for you to get higher quality performances. It doesn't allow you to get higher quality pay.
Right.
Um, and so like just treating it more like a customer experience and working through that entire thing just goes the distance to help you get longer, more consistent, better paying gigs from things like corporate clients and wedding venues and things like that. And you
Yep.
can really do a lot with that. I mean, your proof of concept of that is that you've been living for 13 years, not a famous name or anything like that, but you've been a long-term working musician that has made your income entirely from playing live. It's a
Right. And
really
it's
neat.
it's
It's really neat. Yeah.
yeah, thank you. It's all about what your individual goals are from this business. If your goal is fame, then you're going to take a different route than what I took. My goal was to be able to wake up in the morning and be excited about playing music for a living, because that is enough for me. And I wasn't seeking the fame. I don't need the fame.
Yeah.
I am just happy to be able to do what I love. And that changed. You mentioned, and I understand where a lot of people are coming from with when you have an interaction. I've played every bar within a 2 hour radius of the city. I could tell you, like, I've done all the bar gigs, and I know I've been asked, where I thought, where's the crowd? I thought there were going to be some more people, or thank you, you guys brought a great crowd. It runs the gamut. You're not going to hit 100% on every night, but what I can tell you is, since 2014, every wedding and corporate event I've had, I have never once had anybody ask me, where is your crowd? We only sold this much in alcohol. Why, your people came, but they didn't drink. There has never been a
Yeah.
conversation like that. And I can't tell you how happy that makes me to never have to worry
I
about that.
remember I had a couple of those too, man.
Yeah.
I can think of one in particular where we had just transitioned into a new singer with the old band that I played with,
Yeah.
and we had just brought in a new singer. It was one of her first gigs, and we played this bar, and there was a decent sized crowd at this bar. A lot of people had come specifically to see the new singer, and they had a lot of people had a lot of fun. It was a great time. And then at the end of the gig, the bar owner said, "Where was your crowd?" And I looked around the bar and I went, "It was entirely our crowd. Where
Right.
is your crowd?" It's a
Yes.
different kind of mindset. You have to, you in that situation, you're trying to make money for somebody else.
Right.
Whereas in weddings and in corporate events, it's much more about creating a value package that brings some source of joy for the attendees of the event. It takes more work up front and on the back end, but I
Right.
do think that it's a much more rewarding type of experience for you as a performer.
Yeah, it's not for everybody. Just like the
Yeah.
bar band thing isn't for everybody. With the bar gigs, you can kill it, and there are people that you and I both know that, like, can pack a bar every time they play, right?
Yep.
And that's great. And I don't know that they're making their some of them are making livings doing that. With the bar thing though, and the club thing, a lot of it is what have you done for me lately? You can show up and
Yeah.
pack their bar 10 times in a row, and you have an off night, and they're starting to question, oh, do I want to continue to book these guys next year? So that's another thing that you don't have with the business that I'm in. Now, the tricky part of what I do is having the business mind to be able to set up all the things that, like you said, on the front end, that happen behind the scenes, that really
Mhm.
have very little to do with the actual show that happens on stage. That's the part. With a bar gig, that happens as well. You've got somebody that needs to contact the venue owner, maybe sign a contract, or at least have a handshake agreement with what the terms are going to be. Follow up with them. All the things that you have to do behind the scenes with a club gig or a bar gig. Those are quadrupled when it's a wedding or a corporate event.
Yeah.
And you either have the will to do that, and the skills to do that, or you don't, or you want what's at the end of the rainbow so much that you're willing to learn those skills and work toward that goal.
It's a long game, isn't it? It's much
Yeah,
more
it's
about
definitely a long
getting.
game. I didn't, yeah, I mean, as you know, I didn't start out in 2014, playing 60 or 70 shows a year, in the wedding and corporate world. That's just something we're now getting into over the
Yeah.
last couple of years, where I'm finally seeing the fruits of all the work that we've put in. And it's starting to click, and I'm starting to understand what our brand is, what our value is, our place in our marketplace, because all that's important too.
How do you stay up to date with trends? How do you make sure that you are kind of at the forefront of what is cool with in terms of what people are searching for with wedding bands or corporate bands, things like that? Like what do you do that actually gets you ahead of the curve in that? Because I think that you're really good about that. You bring in you found a way to basically get people finding you uh much better
Right.
than most bands are.
I mean, that's all the stuff that happens behind the scenes. That's your social media, that's your search engine optimization, your website. Um, it can be anything that you do online. If you do a blog, all that helps with people finding you, the content you create, that as well as anybody. You
Hmm.
create consistent high quality content, you do it as well as anybody, and that draws people to find you and know what you're about. As far as staying on top of trends, that's more of a research thing and being open to learning new things. There are a lot of people that just get stuck in this mindset of, there is no good music anymore. This is all crap. I'm going to play what I love, and people are either going to hire us for that, or I don't care because I'm not going to, and I
Yeah.
say, you always have to be open to new trends, you have to be open to change and be able to adapt. And if you're not willing to do that, this is a tough business because your clients are going to change, right? I'm not playing to the same client in 2023 that we played to in 2014. Those
Yeah.
people were 10,
Well, and
back in
the
2014.
expectations become different, don't they? They
Yeah,
like the what is awesome and exciting for somebody that is our age might not be the same as somebody that is in their early 20s or in their 60s. It's
right.
something that it definitely varies by your audience. It varies by the type of gig you're trying to play. It's all those kinds of things put together, don't you find? It's
Yeah, totally. And it's not one of those things too where some people might feel, well, I'm my bride and groom are 24. They're only going to like this type of music. I don't want to play Billie Eilish, every night for the next 10 years. It's not that at all. I'm amazed by how well versed our clients are in the history of music, American music. I mean, they will go back to the 60s and love that stuff, and
yeah.
it's amazing to me because I don't see that so much in the club scene. But
No.
in the corporate and wedding scene, these people they're craving live music. That's why they come to you. They could hire a DJ, right?
Hmm.
But they're craving live music, and they want a variety of live music because
And don't you
most,
find they want a show too? Like it's not
yeah,
just about it's anybody can play music. They want a performance, Like I find
yes,
that that's a big thing.
yep. Quality is important. Energy is important. All of that's important.
That's cool, man. Well, I know we're running a little bit short on time here, so let's look through. I wanted to ask you a handful of questions, and I think we've done maybe two of the ones that we've actually
I'll
talked
try to
about.
give you shorter
So
answers.
no, that's okay. That's okay. Um, Payments and pricing, like how do you go about approaching that when you are talking with a client? How do you price out your gigs? Like how do you account for all the charges that you need to charge for in order to get the best possible value for your client and the best possible return for you?
Right. You have to know your market, and you also
Okay.
have to know what you need to get out of the gig, which is going to be different for a weekend warrior type musician than it is
Mhm.
for somebody who's making a living doing music. And that was another reason, I started to steer more toward weddings and corporate events because the pay was better, and I quite honestly needed to make more.
Mhm.
A lot of the bar gigs here 40, 50 years later are still paying $100 a head, so you can do that here and there, but that can't be every gig that you do.
You'd
You'd
be
have to play 12
you'd be
gigs a
gigging
week.
if you played 100 if you played $100 gigs 365 days a year, you'd be making $36,000. it's
Yeah,
not it's
it's
not a lot of money, so it's you got
exactly.
to understand the value of that,
Yep.
right? So um
Yeah, so a
do
lot
you
of it is to answer your question. A lot of it is knowing what your needs are, and that's something a lot of people don't think about either. They think, well, it's fun, I love doing it, I almost feel bad charging for that. That's
yeah.
not the mindset to have. The mindset to have is, I have this skill that others don't have, and it provides value, and that value is worth something.
Yeah.
So that mindset shift is tough to get in musicians, because we do love what we do, and we a lot of times come at it from an artistic standpoint. But what we do has value, and everybody just needs to remember that. Like, don't feel bad charging for what you do, and you will be amazed what people are willing to pay for what you bring to the table. If you
Yeah.
do a really good job at what you do, there's a lot of value in that. So
Well,
figuring out what to charge is really difficult. It's I don't want to sit here and pretend like it's an easy thing. It takes a lot of trial and error. What you want to make sure you don't do is especially with a repeat client, is undersell yourself from the beginning.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
if you play that $500 gig for your 5-piece band, man, they're going to want you to play that $500 gig
For the rest
until
of,
you're 80.
yeah.
Like they will. It's going to be really hard to bump up from there. If you come in at a higher number, you can always come down, right? You can't go up. You can never go up with your price. You can always come down. So I always tell people, figure out what you need to make, figure out what's fair to you and the venue, and come in at a
In
price
your
that,
case, it's also your musicians too, like what's fair
yes,
to
yeah,
everybody
exactly.
that's traveling to do the gig, right? So,
Absolutely. Yeah, you have to figure out the rest of the people. And if you're running the band and you're the person that is doing all of the contacts and following up with the venues and booking the gigs, and add a little bit in for yourself for that. There's nothing wrong with that. Agents, if an agent books your band, they're going to take 10 to 20%. So
yeah.
you, as the person in the band that is doing all those things, build that into what you charge. Otherwise, you're working for free, right? And I think
Yeah.
there's
All that
room.
legwork at the beginning is, makes
Yeah,
sense.
and I think there's room in budgets to be able to put that in. And your band members are going to, if they're good band members, they're going to be like, yeah, man, you do. We understand that you do more, and you deserve to get a little bit more. I
That's
think that
great.
that's something that a lot of musicians don't understand either. But in a nutshell, research your market. What are other bands playing for that are similar in caliber to what yours is? If you're playing a bar gig, do you bring a crowd? Because that's going to affect what a venue is willing to pay you. If you
Mm-hmm.
don't want to think about that, then start thinking about playing gigs that don't require you to bring a crowd. It doesn't have to be weddings. It can be private parties. It
Mm-hmm.
can be, there are a lot of bands now, there's a lot of money going to parks and small communities where they can afford to pay a couple grand for a band to play down at their pavilion. I mean, go
Mm-hmm.
after those gigs, go after festivals, whatever it is, whatever you like to do, where the intersection of what you love to do and where the money is, that's where you should go.
There's budgets out there. You just got to go find it, right?
There
So,
is money out there, and I know the argument. It's well worn. We've heard it. Well, nobody's going to pay you unless you bring a crowd. You mentioned some of these
mm-hmm.
things, and it's like, then find the market that does, because it's out there.
I want to go back to the whole conversation about interchanging your performers so that you have the ability to have different bands at different times and all of that stuff. I mean, it's a neat concept, and I don't think many know that this is possible. So I was hoping you could kind of elaborate into that and what got you to that decision, and like essentially what made that work so well for you. So go ahead and let me know what you think on that one. But
Okay, I think it was born out of three things, probably. The first being, we got to a point where we were getting multiple requests on the same day.
yeah.
So I was going, man, I hate to tell these people no when they're ready to book us. So how can I get around that? And simultaneously, you have the issue of, if somebody is sick or unavailable for a date, what do you do then?
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
So that's part of it. And then the third thing being the customizability of it all. To be able to upsize and downsize a band, you need a lot of different options, a lot of different members to create different options for your customers. So really, those three things just sort of led me in the direction of the interchangeable parts type of thing, the sort of a build a band concept.
And that originally started as uh, your original concept for that was you were getting asked about multiple gigs, right? And you actually created a second band,
Right.
same name at
Yeah.
one point in time, and then it
That
kind
was
of transitioned.
Right. Yeah, that was the first iteration. That was the first thing, was like, well, okay, so people are liking what we do. I can duplicate what we do.
Yeah.
And once I did that, that did not work well. So I'm going, well, why is this not working? And at the same time, we had started a Steely Dan tribute band, and I'm starting to play with these other musicians, horn players that I had never played with horn players before. Now I'm playing with a full horn section,
Yeah,
and
I
I'm
love that
meeting other
too.
singers, and I'm meeting a lot of new musicians in our community. And as you know, we've got just so much talent here.
Yeah.
For a town this size, there's so many good musicians here. That was all going on at the same time, and it's just sort of a light went off, a little light went off in my brain. I thought, well, man, what if
What if
we
you
could just have,
cherry picked?
yeah, all different sizes. People can pick what size they want. I've got to have multiple drummers. I got to have multiple guitarists anyway, because if somebody's sick or somebody can't make it, we can't just cancel the wedding. So all of that was sort of happening at the same time.
Cool. Well, okay, so how many musicians do you have currently that are flexible as being part of this group?
Yeah, we had, and it's varying degrees, right? So there are
Yeah.
people that are going to play most of the gigs. There are people that are going to play some of the gigs, and there are people that are like, call me if you need me type of people. Um, so I think all in all, we're probably around 29 or 30. And that's really
That's a
about
lot.
enough for me. There are groups out there that are more on the agency side that will just, create a pool of hundreds of musicians across multiple states. I don't want to do that, because at that point, to me, it's not really a band.
And
Because
you're not guaranteeing your product the same way at that point.
exactly right, it's tough to
Yeah.
do that too. With the size that we are now, we can max out at about 3 events on a date.
Wow.
Those make me a little bit nervous because I feel like we have almost everybody booked that day. And then we get back to the thing, well, what if somebody can't make it? If I have 3 drummers, but they're all playing on the same day, so those make me a little bit nervous. I try not to do that unless we have to, but doing 2 on a date, I'm really happy to do that.
And that's happening fairly regularly now too, isn't it? It's like
Yeah.
a lot of the time, I think I played one in October where I was in one city with a group of like 9 or 10. You had an entire different group of 9 or 10 playing locally here,
Yep.
and then there was a third group somewhere within like an hour of here
Yeah.
on one night, and I think that was like a group of 5, right? Something around
Yep.
there. It was like it's amazing how you've been able to do that, and I think that like I've heard this question get posed a couple of times with relation to this, is that how do you guarantee that you're getting the same band? How do you guarantee that you're getting the same product every time? And I think that, like, having been part of it, I see that what you see is what you get, no matter which rendition of people, which group of people are involved. You get the same quality, you get the same kind of performance from each one that gets put out there, and it doesn't really matter which musicians are involved. It ends up being pretty much the same product every time. And I
Right.
was wondering if you could speak to like how you were able to get everybody focused in the same direction so that the quality of the show ends up pretty much the same every time, regardless of who's playing it.
Yeah. I think it all starts with the band members.
Yeah.
And I think building a core of good quality people who happen to also be really good musicians, people that you can count on to be on time and who have integrity, who don't want to let you down and don't want to let the image of themselves be let down. You draw those people in and you get a core group of them, and that attracts others like them. So I've been super fortunate to be able to meet people all over town. Part of it is self-fulfilling because you already have quality musicians, so that attracts more. The pay is a big thing. If you pay them, you're going to get a higher quality musician because you've got those people that are specifically looking for and appreciate those type of gigs.
And, and
Um,
they're looking for the
so
paycheck, right? So like
yeah,
it's they're
so
not
a
going to
lot
play
of
the $100 gig every time, right? So
right, and they also don't want to be out till 2 in the morning,
true.
in a situation where everybody's drunk. So it's not just the pay; it's also the quality of the gigs. They might want to have a filet mignon dinner before they play, right?
I
So,
will say the last time I played a gig like that, there was a huge steak. And I think I showed you a picture of it. It was about
yeah,
that big. And I got to say thank you because that alone was probably worth the gig. That
right,
steak it was awesome. So,
yeah,
yeah, that was a casino gig. That was a lot of fun. But
yeah. Some of those gigs, I mean, they're people are spending $150 a plate on those meals. So that is a big part of what we do. I try to make sure everybody's fed well and treated well, and
that's
it
another
goes
thing.
back to what would
Hotel
I want.
rooms when you need it, things like that, right?
Yeah, yeah, we get hotel rooms if it's outside of 2 hours. We'll do hotel rooms. So yeah, it goes back to how would I want to be treated if I was playing in the group. And that's what I try to do for everybody else.
That's great, Jon. You made me think of a question that we had not previously kind of discussed, but uh, just because of you've had some very fun, unique situations of playing live. Tell me about the couple of experiences that you had where some celebrity performers were actually at those gigs.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that? And do you mind if I share those videos?
No, that's fine. Yeah, you can go ahead. It was kind of funny. I booked a wedding, um, and I get a message from the groom, and he says, "Hey, do you guys mind learning songs?" I was like, "Yeah, we're open to learning songs." And he said, "Well, can you do Old Town Road by Lil Nas X?" And at the time, I had not heard the song yet,
Oh,
which
you're
it's
kidding! I
hard to
didn't know
believe.
that.
Hard to
That's
believe,
great.
but I hadn't heard the song yet. So I went and listened to the song to see, because I don't want to just say yes. I want to know, are we going to be able to do this song justice? Does it fit our instrumentation? Does it fit our vibe? Or are they cussing and this, like all these things? And I listened to the song and I was like, technically we could pull this off. It's like a country rap thing, but yeah, we could pull this off. And I said, we can do this. I don't know that we're going to be able to do it the justice that you might want. Is this something that you absolutely have to have live? And he responded in the email. He said, well, there's an artist that I'm working with, and we would really like you to do this song live if at all possible. So little light bulb goes off in the head. And I was like, okay, I'm going to Google this guy. Right. So I Google the groom, and he's A&R at Capitol Records.
Oh, you're kidding. I didn't realize that. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah. He's A&R at maybe it wasn't Capitol. It was Columbia or whatever the big one in New York is.
Okay.
But anyway, I Google him, find out that he's director of A&R in his division, and that they had just signed Lil Nas X.
Oh,
so
wow.
I'm going, oh my gosh, are we going to play like, and then I started looking up Lil Nas X. I'm like, this song is almost number one. And then of course it went on to be number one and break Mariah Carey's record. And I'm like, well, he's not going to come to the wedding, right? This wedding is in Angola, Indiana, on a farm. Like, he's not going to be there, of course. So I do all this research, and I messaged the groom back, and I said, well, are you thinking that he's going to perform this with us? And he was like, we're trying to make it work. He's got a lot of stuff going on, but if it works, we're going to have him there, and he's going to play the song with you guys. I'm like, this is incredible. This is great. That's cool. Sure enough, that's exactly what happened. And I mean, the thing that is so crazy too is we're doing this song at the wedding of his A&R rep, and it's at the moment we're playing the song with him. It's number one in the country. It's breaking the record, and it was the last week that it was number one.
No
and then and you think to yourself as a musician, well, yeah, he had this number one hit, but like, is this guy going to be something 10 years from now? And then he goes on to just kill it in the music business and just hit after hit, and becomes this giant star. And it was and
you were right at the forefront of that with him.
Yeah. And he was just caught up in this as I think he was 20 years old.
Oh man.
And you could just see how green he was, but how much charisma and talent he had at that age. And he was just he was born for what he's doing.
That's great.
So
so that's one of two that I know you want to talk about, right?
Yeah.
So the other one, I got to say, I have to relate to this one because I'm a keyboard player, and you got some of the best in that department. Couple of years ago, right?
Yeah, it was all about keyboards, actually. When that happened, we were playing at a hotel here locally called the Guest House. And for those of you that aren't familiar with Fort Wayne, Sweetwater is the big music industry in Fort Wayne. I sometimes joke and call it Sweet Wayne, because the owner of Sweetwater has purchased local businesses all around and everything too. But it's a big deal here in Fort Wayne. So they had partnered with a local hotel to put up their guests that would come into their studio. Mm-hmm. So you could have somebody fly in, record in Sweetwater's studio, and be spending the night at the guest house. So it wasn't uncommon for people like Pat Benatar or somebody like that to show up at the guest house, and they just walk in when you're playing. And this is a small room, right? This is not
Yes,
some
it's a
big
bar.
amphitheater.
It's
This is a
basically a small
lounge.
bar. Yeah.
Yep, it's a small bar, little lounge. It's got sort of a jazz lounge type feel with the little round booths and the candles on the table and everything. Just a really cool vibe. Happened to be the week that we were playing there was Gear Fest, or I'm sorry, it was Key Fest at
Oh,
Sweetwater,
okay.
which was their celebration of all things keyboard. So they had invited in famous keyboard players from all over the world. And we're playing this set, and we see these three guys walk in the middle of the song, and the bass player P is going, dude, that I think that's Jordan Rudess. And for those of you who don't know Jordan Rudess, he's the keyboard player for Dream Theater, and just a
And he's one of the
virtuoso.
best keyboard players in the history of keyboard.
Oh, he's
amazing. Yeah.
So ridiculously talented. And he's walking in with these two other guys, and so we're going, okay, who are these other guys, right? And come to find out, the other two guys were Tom Brislin, who currently plays in Kansas and has played in many different bands, toured with many different bands, but is currently in Kansas. And Bill Lawrence, he's got a tremendous solo career, but also is one of the keyboardists in Snarky Puppy, which if you're a music fan, if you haven't heard of them, you got to check out Snarky Puppy. They're ridiculous.
Amazing.
Yeah. So it turned into this rotating jam session of three phenomenal talents who were more than happy. And it was so cool. These guys were so modest, and we just had a blast. It was like if you and I got together and we just let's try out some tunes and just have a good time. And the audience went along for the ride too. And it was almost like we would just start playing a song, and we just told them, guys, this is open stage. Okay, just walk up. We got a keyboard here. Our sax player also played keys, so we had a keyboard on the stage. Just if you hear something you want to play on, come up. Don't feel like, it's just come up. So we would start a song, and you would see Jordan Rudess walk up to the stage. He's like, okay, I want to jam on Crossroads with you guys. Okay. And then the next song would come up, and we did, what do we do? Bust a Move of all songs, right? And I'm like, well, they're probably not gonna play on Bust a Move, right? Well, Bill Lawrence is like doing this as he walks up to the stage, and he totally gets into Bust a Move and takes that song to a place that nobody has ever taken that song. Like, we've got video of these songs that I'm mentioning, and you can hear what he does with Bust a Move, and it's just crazy. So it was so much fun. It was so surreal. And then of course these guys were cool. I was like, can we get a picture with you guys at the end of the night? And they got their arms around us. And it was just, it wasn't any more about fame or status or anything like that. It was a bunch of musicians that love music, having a great time, regardless of the setting, regardless of what was going on. We all loved to play music, and we were brothers at that point, right? We were just brothers in music. So cool. And it was just a blast.
Don't you find, like, I found that with every experience I've had like that too. Like, the band that I played with for about a decade before you and I really started working together was there was one where, do you remember the musician Ryan Starr? He had a couple of songs.
Absolutely.
And Ryan was great. He came and performed something where he talked at a radio station, and then later that day, they didn't really tell anybody, but he went and performed at a local bar, and our band was the aftermath of that event. So we had gotten in touch with his people, and he came up and performed a song or two with us. And then he ended up liking the band so much that he stayed and drank and danced with people all the rest of the night. And it was like, this is a guy that's supposed to be a famous rock star. You'd think that he would have like his entourage, and he would be in and out as soon as possible. And he hung out for the entire night. It was awesome. Like, you find out that basically, no matter what status you are, as far as your musicianship and things like that, a lot of musicians are really, really just great people. And if you want to talk music with them, it's like this conversation. We could talk for hours.
Right.
And so it's great that those are such great experiences. Good people.
Yes. Well, good people will always be good people. If you or I got famous, we're not going to change fundamentally who we are. So these people, if they're good people when they're famous, they're still good people, and they just they came into that bar that night because they wanted to watch some live music because they're musicians and that's what they do. Right. And
That's such a great experience. I can only
yeah,
imagine how that felt that night.
yeah, it was really, it was a highlight, of, since I've been playing music, that's definitely one of the highlights.
That's great, man. Well, okay, so we've been talking for a long time at this point, so I think we better wrap it up at this point.
Sure.
But last question I want to ask you: if there are aspiring musicians out there, and they're looking to either get famous or become full-time musicians or grow their ability to play songs live or get to be better performers, what kind of advice do you have for people that are coming up and wanting to level themselves up to be a better musician, better performer?
Um, yeah, to sum it up, just persistence.
Yeah.
Do not give up. I love what Dave Grohl. I love Dave Grohl in general, but he's um, such a great guy, and in addition to being an amazing musician and songwriter and everything, but he said, "Get in a garage and suck." Said he said, "Put the band together, suck. Just do what you love to do. Don't worry about all that stuff that's down the road. Be in the here and now." um, Play the next song, play the next gig, whatever it is. And all of that stuff comes. And it's amazing the way I'm a believer that, if a dream was put in your heart to do that thing, that's there for a reason, and don't ignore that. And take steps every day to follow that, and just persistent, stick with it. And you'll find, just when you think, oh man, is this going to work? Something's going to come around the corner. I promise you. And you'll go, oh, this is why I stuck with it, and it will get you to the next thing and the next thing. And it's just like walking up a giant staircase. You're not going to jump to the top. You take the next step, and 10 years later, you look back and you go, wow, look how far I've come. And I'm way further than I was when I started, and further than I really ever thought I was going to get, because I stuck with it.
That's great, Chuck.
So persistence.
That's great words of advice, man. That's well, I very much appreciate you coming on. This has been a lot of fun to talk with you.
Same here.
I hope we get to do it again at some point, honestly.
I'm happy to come back anytime. I love what you're doing too. So I'm happy to help out and come back anytime.
Sounds great, man. Well, take care and we'll talk soon, okay?
All right. Thanks, Danny.
Thanks, John. I hope you enjoyed today's interview with Jon Durnell and the great information that he provided with it. If you'd like to learn more about Jon or his band, Night to Remember, I'll leave some links in the description and you can reach out or check him out at your leisure, okay? That's it for this week. Best of luck to you on your next great performance. Have a great rest of your week and take care. See you soon.